Hi Cam followers, I hope you've all had a lovely day, and this is I'm Amy. I'm here to introduce our fabulous guest Diane today, who is going to speak to us about all things enrichment. And so I'll pass over to Diane to introduce herself, and then we can go from there.
Hi everyone. So I'm Diane. I know some of you here probably have already seen me or know of me. I'm a dog trainer and behaviour consultant in Southwest London. I also wrote a book that I have somewhere. What have I done with it here?
Oh yes, show us the book.
I have a book called Beyond the Bowl, which we also have a Facebook group which is all about different ways of feeding and enrichment and things like that. And as a result of that, I do a lot of talks on enrichment and presentations on enrichment for various life stages, which I guess is why I'm here. I also have a brand new online membership called puppytrainingclub.co.uk is the website, and we are here for puppies predominantly, which is a bit weird with doing this for elderly dogs. I do have quite a lot of experience with elderly dogs. I have my own 15-year-old Staffordshire Bull Terrier, George, who is a Battersea boy. He is 15, he is blind, he's deaf, he has Cushing's disease, he has a heart condition, which means he's kind of end stage heart failure, but he also is arthritic. And my whole enrichment kind of protocol changed as he went through his various life stages, and actually coming into the kind of senior years, I very much had to change what I do and how I work with him and how I enrich not only the environment but also his life in general. So yeah, so I've got
have you as his owner.
I'm not sure he thinks that all of the time. But yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, fabulous experience, and we're so grateful to have you here to share sort of your wisdom and everything enrichment. And we absolutely think your Facebook page Beyond the Bowl is fantastic, and if you haven't found it, definitely check it out, because it is, you know, some really good tips and tricks on there and things that I hadn't ever thought of trying or doing before. So yeah, definitely. So Diane, tell us all about why you're so fascinated with enrichment.
I think it's a couple of years ago, it was kind of a really big buzzword in not only in the dog industry, but also in the animal world, in terms of we started looking at how we could enrich different environments in zoo settings, in wildlife settings, and what is enrichment and how we can then incorporate it not just with our wild animals but also within our pet homes and within our pet environments. And I think if we have a look at what enrichment is, for me, enrichment is about allowing the animal to perform more natural behaviors. Even though we have them, you know, the dogs are domesticated and they live in our world, how can we enable our animals to forage, to seek for things, to enhance their kind of physical and psychological needs that they have? How can we better serve that to them, or how can we better set up the environment so they have an outlet for those natural behaviors that they innately have? And you know, for a long time we've done a lot of training, or certainly a few years ago we were focusing on training and things like that, and as a dog trainer I do a lot of that, but it's all about how we can improve the environment and enrich the lives of our pet dogs, really.
Yeah, absolutely. You've answered my next question, which is what does enrichment mean in the canine sense? And I
there
think
we
go. Perfectly. And I didn't realise you were involved in zoo animals. That's really cool.
I think just through Kong, I'm the UK Kong ambassador, which I probably forgot to mention. But yeah, with Kong, we do a lot of enrichment in terms of zoo scenarios, in terms of providing the animals with lots of additional enrichment from Kong as a Kong product.
Right, that's so cool. And do you want to just elaborate a little bit more, because I know you touched on what the purpose of enrichment is, but what does it actually achieve in a physiological sense?
So we need to think about how physically it improves dogs. So in terms of mobility, and it keeps dogs active. We need to think about cognition in terms of all of that kind of puzzles and the kind of problem solving aspects of enrichment, whether it's something that we physically give them or whether it's an environment adaptation that we do. Those types of things are really good in terms of things like canine cognitive dysfunction syndrome. It's about keeping the brain active. It's about keeping the body active. And it's not just about giving a food item. There's so many different avenues and so many different sections of enrichment. And I kind of break it up into kind of 5 or 6. There's so many different things that we can do and focus on. And I think, especially for me, obviously having an elderly dog, sensory enrichment for me is one of the big ones. And it's about providing different sensory experiences that keeps his brain active, but also keeps all of his senses active, even though his hearing and his sight is compromised. It doesn't mean that I have to stop doing things that opens those senses or that kind of enriches his world. And so, yeah, and also having, in terms of arthritis and things like the kind of more joint issues or the aging decline that dogs have, it means that I can keep them physically active without it being long walks. It keeps joints moving. It keeps the kind of motion, can be small, tiny little movements, can have a big impact on general, I guess, mobility health, as you know. But it's not, I can't take George to the park for an hour's walk anymore. How do I keep him physically active? I have to just think about how I can do things differently within his environment to enable him to do that.
Yeah, it's a big challenge in the aging dog, where you can't just take them for an hour's walk. Your whole routine sort of changes a little bit, doesn't it? It doesn't mean it has to be compromised. It's just a bit different, isn't it? It's like
it's just different, and we just do different things, and that's where I think the whole sensory and the whole environmental enrichment comes into it.
Yeah, I wanted to dig deeper into that, actually, because you said you split it into, is it 5 or 6 categories?
Yeah. So
tell us about how you categorize it.
Yeah. So I look at obviously sensory enrichment for me. I have a few notes here just to remind me to mention things as well, which I'll kind of come to. But kind of sensory enrichment for me is a big thing with our elderly dogs, and sensory can be anything that stimulates sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch. And I know my old boy loves rolling in long grass or running through. We've got fields of sweet corn where I live, and he just loves running through it. And it's just that the feeling that he has on either side of him, and you see him running through long grass. He's so happy with himself. And things like hay bales, if you break all the hay bales up and he goes kind of snuffling through, even kind of like the feel of that on his face, he really likes things like that. Or like rolling on his back and rolling. Well, I thought, you look at dogs rolling, you're like, oh, what are they rolling in? But actually he rolls for enjoyment, and I'm sure it probably releases different areas in his back. But he very much likes, now that he can't see and he can't hear that much, he's definitely, his sensory enrichment, I've had to upscale it a bit. And things like, sometimes I saw today, someone was brushing their German Shepherd out in the park, and we just have a little pootle around, and where I let them finish, and then when they'd walked off, I took him over to where the dog's fur had been left, and he had a good old sniff and a good old smell of the dog. And the dog wasn't, the dog was quite happy being brushed outside, and it was so nice to be able to take him over and let him just have that as a sensory experience. He didn't have to go straight over and go and play with the dog, but he could certainly smell that dog afterwards just by having the fur that was left on the ground. And things like, I do a lot of kind of bringing the outside in for him, in terms of sensory stuff, or I'll go and I'll record on my phone. If I'm out in the morning and there's lots of bird song and things like that, I'll go and record it, and then I'll bring it in and I'll play it to him. So things like that I'll do for my middle dog. But yeah, it's about thinking about different things that we can do with our older dogs.
I hadn't even thought about recording sounds on your phone. That's a fantastic idea.
Sounds, music, things like before George lost his hearing completely, things like the wind chimes that were out in the garden, so that when I couldn't get him out, I'd kind of record so that he could hear things. A year ago he could hear things. He lost his hearing over the last year, and so things like, just because we focus in terms of the senses, we focus a lot on sight and food and taste and things like that, and actually with those, hearing is massive. So for me, kind of sensory things are, how can we slow our dogs down, but also how can we improve their senses? And like I said, a lot of people, when we talk about enrichment, we talk about things like Kongs, we talk about food stuff, and it doesn't have to be like that. There's other things, or having dogs that like being brushed. I've got a dog that's got a short coat, and he likes being brushed with like a baby's brush.
Massage,
so like a little kind of massage, so things like that. And scent is a huge one. For me with George and kind of the senior dogs. I wrote down some of the things that I add in terms of herb scented toys, and as long as they have space to kind of move away from them if they want to. But things the kind of herbs that I use are things like lavender, rosemary, peppermint, myrrh. I do a lot of oils in terms of scents for dogs, but anything that you've got in the garden really. Things like sage I might bring into it, and I'll rub those on some toys, and that the sensory lavender is really nice and calming. So yeah, we do quite a lot of lavender type stuff, so that he's got different sensory things from the garden, even just things from the garden. If you've got a lavender bush, we've got geraniums, things like that, you can bring that scent in. I live in a flat, so I don't have access to a really nice big garden. We have a garden, but it's a communal garden. So sometimes I will bring things in. It's about bringing the outside in for him. If he's having a day where he's not going to have too much extra. Recently, it's been really hot, so we couldn't go out with him. So I basically brought the outside in, which was quite nice for him.
Bless poor oldies, really struggling.
Yeah. Then in terms of other things, I kind of digress and go off, so always bring me back to what I was originally saying. Things like training, so we've got cognitive enrichment, getting them to kind of increase that mental stimulation, things like puzzle feeders, a training session to increase the bond with their parent, and keep that relationship going, which I think is quite important. We've kind of touched on a little bit of environmental enrichment, and it can be something as easy like with George, like different substrates of him walking on sand. We've got a sand pit outside. I don't really do pebbles because his feet, he's got arthritis in his toes, so I have to keep the substrate quite soft. But things like having a raised bed that he can go and lie on in the sun outside when he likes sunbathing. So thinking about different substrates that you can put underneath them. Or I might put some bubble wrap or some Hessian sack and just put a towel over the top of it, so that he's got different things that he can feel with his feet that aren't going to injure him or aren't going to hurt him, that he can have. Then again, we spoke about toys and puzzles, things like feeding, and I'll talk about Kongs and the kind of more food, the more food dispenser type things that we can give them, but also things like spices, herbs and spices, or feeding in a slightly different way. Sometimes I do like little menu platters, kind of meal platters, where I'll have 5 or 6 different novel food items that he can smell and ingest, and it will be novel stuff that he doesn't get all the time. So obviously we need to make sure that if we are going to offer them different fresh foods, we need to make sure that it's not going to be something that's going to upset their stomach. But things like a bit of some melon, sometimes they'll have a little bit of fish, or if I don't eat the skin of fish, but once it's cooked, I will pop that on the little platter for him. He had blueberries on it this morning, a little bit of natural yogurt. So it's like different types of things, different food items, just to give him a little different kind of taste sensation, if that makes sense. And certainly sometimes I'll offer some herbs out to him, so like some chamomile. I might have some Italian mixed herbs. I might put that on a little tray and see if he wants a little bit of that. And I know when I do it on like these little wooden boards, and I know kind of when the little wooden boards come out, you see all the dogs are like, oh, is it me? Is it my turn? And they get quite excited about it. And then sometimes I'll put stuff down. And I know with Louie, I did one, and I put a mushroom on it, and he wouldn't go near it until I took the mushroom off. Obviously, there was something about the mushroom that he was like, nope, not having it. As soon as I took the mushroom off, he was like, okay, I'll go and have it. But yeah, it's kind of just seeing how they, and if you have got multiple dogs, what their choice preference is over what type of food they like. Yeah. Oh, I just want to say hello to Donna. I think Donna's got a question.
Yes.
About cow's yogurt. I wondered, as I thought goat's yogurt was okay. So I don't feed cow's dairy to my dogs, just because they've got a little bit of intolerance there. It's all about knowing your own dog, really, and you can do a food trial, obviously, but I tend to use goat's yogurt with my dogs. It tends to be a little bit gentler on the stomach, rather than cow's yogurt. So some dogs can tolerate it, some dogs can't, but it's all about knowing your own dog, really. And I think this is where it comes with the food. If we are going to add in different things, we just need to be a little bit mindful of keeping it nice and bland to start off with, rather than trying to put lots in and then it upsets their stomach.
And you touched on a little bit about multi-dog households. How do you sort of deal with enrichment in sort of a multi-dog setting?
Yeah, we have to be careful. Just obviously, if we've got any dogs that have any kind of resource guarding issues, obviously the potential there could be an issue, and so we need to. I always make sure that my dogs have their own spaces to eat. So if I'm going to give them a bone or a chew to chew down on, or if I'm going to give them the Kong, they have their own spaces within the house, and generally they know they have their own places, and Louie will go and have his over in the corner. I've got a crate, the door's never closed, it's his choice whether he goes in it. He will generally take his stuff in there. Billy will go, Billy likes to lie underneath the clothes horse thing, so he'll go and lie in there, and George just takes his to the sofa. And then once they've all finished, they will get up and they'll swap, and they'll go and make sure that the other one hasn't left anything in there. And it's quite nice, but we do have to watch them carefully. And certainly when we first start introducing them, like I said, I very much manage them rather than it just being a bit of a free-for-all, just because we don't want to encourage that competition for food, and we don't want to encourage any kind of stress behaviours if a dog thinks that the other dog is going to come and take it away. So make sure that everyone has a nice calm place where they can go and eat it.
Yeah, that's lovely. And Emma's just put it kind of links in with the next bit that we were going to touch on. Before we came live, we were actually having a chat about cage rest and, dogs recovering from orthopedic surgery or procedures where they can't really do any exercise, or it's just sort of lead-based exercise. And I can see Emma Reed's written, my little dog Millie has arthritis and has just had her cruciate ligament surgery. I'm in the middle of making some adaptations as I can see that she's getting very fed up. She's near the end of her bed rest, but do you have any extra ideas I can cheer her up with until she can walk properly again? So should we touch on some of, because you have some fabulous ideas.
Yeah, I think bringing the outside in for me is a massive one. I had a dog with, unfortunately, I lost him a year and a half ago, but he had bilateral elbow osteoarthritis, and he really couldn't do very much. And for him, again, it's like I do with George now, is I bring the outside in. And I'll go and collect leaves, I'll collect feathers, I'll collect anything I can outside. I get a box from Sainsbury's, so one of the cardboard boxes that you get the vegetables in, that you can just go and help yourself, they're free. And I'll fill it with stuff, whether it's bits of molehills that I find, or like I said, feathers, leaves, whatever it is. What I would say is make sure you put before you put it in the box, put it on a white sheet, so you let any of the little creatures I have been known to bring home quite a few flies and bugs and beetles. So now what I do before I put it in the box is I'll just lay it on a white sheet and just shake it, so that any of the wildlife can come out if they're in it. Things like fir cones and things like that are quite good. And again, it's just bringing the outside in, because they can't go out, or they're on crate rest, or again, with things like Kongs, sometimes I find like the Kongs and the licky mats, the position that they have to lie to have them can compromise them. And I did bring it with me. Again, Kong. This is called a Kong air flyer, and it's actually a frisbee, but we're not going to use as a frisbee, obviously. But I find these are a really great alternative to the licky mat, because you can pierce it on either side, put some string through it, and then if they're on crate rest, or they're in a playpen, or they're in some kind of confinement area, we can tie it to the side of the crate, so that the dog can lick here and the head is straight, rather than having to put the head down. Or if they're standing, if they're putting their head down and putting their neck down, we can actually lift this up, or we can put it on a tray, on a stool, or we can put it on some kind of box, so that they're licking this. With George, my old boy, struggles with the licky mats. And they're great. I love licky mats. They're these types of things. You can get these on the cam shop. But he struggles with these little beveled bits, because he hasn't got any front teeth at the bottom, so he's got no shovel, and he struggles to get the food out of these. So I find with the Kong air flyer, because it's completely flat, he can just lick and it doesn't affect his bottom jaw. So these, for me, if you've got a dog with any kind of dental disease, or anything in the bottom, in the mouth, sometimes I find they find the licky mats difficult. But if you haven't, then licky mats are great.
Yeah, they are really
and you can
good.
get them on the cam shop, so go and get one.
Yeah, they love the texture, don't they? Just experimenting with the texture on their tongue.
Yeah.
And that was another point. We've talked about some of the benefits of sort of enrichment, and why it's so important, and sort of trying to bring almost back a little bit of sort of natural behaviour into sort of our human environment. But can we just dig a little bit deeper into why that is so beneficial for some of our sort of arthritic or mobility compromised? I
think because it gives them something to do, and it keeps them active. And things like the snuffle mats, or the Kongs essentially is a problem-solving tool. It's no different from the gorilla or the monkey that has the stick that pokes into a log to get the ants out. It's about, how do I get the food out of them? And we've got these ones here. If we're stuffing this with food, how does your dog get the food out? And it gives them the opportunity to practice those problem-solving capabilities that they have, but also it keeps them moving, it keeps them active, and it keeps them doing stuff.
Yeah, and it's a great distraction, isn't it? If you've got a dog that's sort of in pain, sort of having something to do, or something, it keeps it's a bit like mindfulness that we practice.
Yeah. I call it's kind of like mind body well-being for dogs, really. It's kind of how I would kind of describe enrichment.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the snuffle mat as well, with you were saying about sort of bringing in sort of a natural foraging behaviour.
That natural kind of seeking foraging behaviour. And again, it's, if George puts his nose in here, and like I said, I really like snuffle mats, also available in the cam shop. But he's not just picking the treats out, he gets the sensation of the felt on his face. So again, there's a sensory element to it as well. And it is that seeking foraging behaviour that dogs really like.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about enrichment, how if you've got people that sort of haven't explored this with their dogs, or have explored it a little bit but not really gone into much detail, how can we sort of bring this into a component of our everyday life with our pets?
So we can do things like scatter feeding and kind of throwing food out in the garden for them if they're on a dry food. We can look at food enrichment. We haven't really talked about food enrichment at the moment. Well, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but things like the puzzle toys and the things like Kong. Kong do a senior range, which is great for our arthritic dogs. The rubber is softer than the regular classic Kong. So it's a lot gentler for the dogs. They haven't got to kind of chew down harder if we've got any dogs that struggle with chewing. But we can stuff their food in here so that we can make it slightly a little bit more difficult. We can give them something, like taps into that problem seeking, finding solutions of how to get the food out. One thing that I would say with all of these food toys, the licky mats, the Kongs, all of the kind of treat dispensers, is we need to make sure that we don't make the dog frustrated. Sometimes I do find that they get frustrated with these because we pack them too tightly, we make them too difficult to start off with. And I think when we've got our older dogs, we need to make it easier for them. And I know with George, with my old boy now, I don't freeze them. So I used to freeze them, and they used to take him a long time. But now it's too hard for him because of his teeth, and he is old. We make it too hard for him. So all I do, I've got a little one here. I'll try and explain it in as best way.
I was going to ask you because I think that's something that I didn't really figure, because we were talking before we went live, and I was saying, I freeze mine, and then I felt really bad because my old boy, who's 9, does exactly that. He'll get like so far, and then he'll be like, I've had enough of this, and walk away. So
because they just don't understand how well, it's not they don't understand how to use them, it's just we just make it too hard. And so in terms of with the Kong, we have the Kong here, and this is what it looks like on the inside. So what I generally do is I'll have this in some kind of cup or some kind of holder so that it's open, and the hole at the top end is here, and I'll just drop some dry food or some dry biscuits into this bit here. So this level here, which is the smaller level, will just have dried biscuits or dried treats in, so that they just fall out. This section here, I will either mix some of the dry food with a bit of baby food, or you can get these kind of fruity baby foods, kind of Ella's Organic or the Cow and Gate ones. There's loads on the market. Just make sure that they don't have onion powder in. So we want to make sure that it's the fruity ones, or like this Cow and Gate it's just chicken and pumpkin. Don't know if you can see that there. It's just chicken and pumpkin. So I might mix some of that with their dry food, or a wet food if you're using a wet food, or raw if you feed raw, or I feed a home cooked food called Different Dog. That will be in that section there. That will pretty much be the only section that's kind of frozen. And then this top section where the big hole is, I'll have a variety of different foods in there. So I'll either go back to the kibble with a little bit of some vegetables mixed in there, but I'll make this bit easier for the dogs to get it out, so that when I use this one here, so that when they're licking and they're trying to they can get their tongue in here, which means they get this bit. They get this. It's hard to manipulate the Kong. They can get this bit out, and then this is the only bit that's frozen. And then by the time they've got this bit out, then the other food just falls out. So it's an easy win for the dogs, and the dogs like it. But I find definitely when we stuff it, we pack it tightly and then we freeze it. For a lot of dogs, I just find that they just go, it's too hard. I can't do this. And for our senior dogs, I would definitely go for the senior range, the purple range, rather than purple or the red one, unless you've got staffies, and then you're going to need the black extreme ones.
Yeah,
I speak from experience.
Someone has said that staffy cross that's like an extreme chewer, but a collie who's medium. So there you go. Black.
Yeah, so the staffy will go for the black extreme for the staffy, and the black extreme is really solid. It's a much harder rubber. This one's been cut in half, but it's much stronger. And that's for the real power chewers, but the other dogs can have like the classic, or like I said, the senior Kong.
Yeah, I love that, because we often don't think about sort of the TMJ and sort of the pain that associated with chewing. So having
and having that, and like I said, it's something that I kind of had to start thinking about with having an older dog. And like I said, he's at the end of his golden years, and pretty much from from kind of 10 onwards, I had to kind of change the things that I did with him. The other thing that I find with the older dogs, and we have to think about the brachycephalic breeds, is they can't do Kongs. They can't do a lot of those toys. So things like the tires that Kong do are much easier for them to do, because we can just put the feed in here, and the opening is much wider, so that they can have things like this. Or for the boxers and the Frenchies, the snuffle mats are brilliant.
Yeah, they are great. I feed my dogs in a snuffle mat probably about every other day. They love it.
Yeah, the only thing that I found with George now is he just picks it up and throws it, and all the food falls out.
Oh, does he? Gosh, he's super clever. Mine haven't figured that out. I would have thought that they would have actually.
Yeah, he does most of the stuff now, like the puzzle feeders and all the kind of interactive toys like that. He just picks them up and throws them. I'll send you a video, because he's quite. Yeah.
How funny is that?
Takes me longer to fill them than it does for him to actually eat them.
Oh, bless him. He's still enjoying himself though. That's the main.
Still enjoying himself. And things like, the other thing to think about is things like the DIY toys that you can make. So things like, water bottles with some treats in, and they've just got to throw that around the floor, or a towel rolled, put some treats in the towel and then roll it up. Or I use boxes where I'll roll I've got so many odd socks and I'll put some treats in the odd socks, roll it up, and then fill a tissue box with those, so they have to pull the socks out to get the treats out and things like that. So there's loads of, like, again, we have to be careful about dogs eating cardboard or dogs eating plastic, things like that. We have to be a bit more sensible about it. But as long as we're watching them and we know how they eat, and we know that they're not ingesting anything that's going to be harmful, then basically I go through my recycle bin every week, and if it isn't glass or tin, I'll make some kind of toy out of it.
That's a really good idea. I have actually tried the towel technique, because I joined your Facebook group Beyond the Bowl, and I saw it and I was like, oh my goodness, that's such a good idea. It took my dogs ages to work out how to unroll the towel to get it.
Yeah.
Then the second time,
again, sometimes helping our dogs increases that relationship that we have with them just trying to find basically buried food is what we're encouraging. And actually sometimes we can show them, and then it becomes an experience that we both do together. And I think that's especially important with our older dogs, about keeping that relationship that we've had all these years, and sharing those experiences with our dogs.
Yeah, definitely. That really helps sort of cement that bond, doesn't it, when you have to sort of change routine and you can no longer do sort of massive long countryside walks anymore, but you still have that sort of one-on-one fun. And
I think things like, finding treats in a towel or in a box. I'm one of those parents that has to have the intelligent child or dog, and I have very high expectations, but I get a huge amount of joy of seeing George doing it and working it out for himself and then winning. And things like opening an egg box, I have huge excitement when he does that. The other dog, Billy, will just rip it to shreds. George actually goes and opens the box, and so little things like that, I'm like, oh, he's still got it. And I have a huge amount of enjoyment from watching him figure it out and work it out. And like I said, sometimes I'll help him, or I'll do in rich gardens, I'll go and put some bamboo canes down and put some food out and watch him walk over those. So I want to keep him really slow, and I want to slow him down, get his muscles firing, so get him thinking about his body and getting all of those neurological pathways firing about what I'm doing, and he's aware of his body, he's aware of his feet, his knees, his shoulders, slowing him down with the movement, but also encouraging him to find the food. And just seeing how he responds to those different textures is amazing.
Yeah,
love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's lovely to see, isn't it? And I think you can actively see them sort of, if they're in a bit of a tiz or anything, you see them calm down, don't you? As they sort of go around this problem solving or sensory garden as such. And we've talked about so many ideas, and you're an absolute font of knowledge, and everyone is absolutely loving it. Everyone's saying how wonderful.
There's quite a few questions, I think.
I think there's quite a few, which we can have a look at. Oh, well, lots of people are saying none of mine like frozen, or one of somebody saying that their dog hid the Kong and they found it 3 months later. Whoops. It didn't smell too bad.
One thing I do I do a lot of scent work with my dogs, all of my dogs. I've got 4 dogs here at the moment, and I started off using Kong, and it went a little bit wrong when there was a Kong stuck underneath the sofa, and Billy was like, my puppy was lying, indicating that there was a Kong underneath the sofa, and I missed it because I was like, I thought he was just lying down, and so then I had to go back and kind of retrain him. But yeah, Kongs they're great for kind of scent work and teaching dogs to find stuff, so that can be a good outlet for our elderly dogs in terms of doing scent based games with them, teaching them to go and find the Kong or find some of their toys.
And can you ever do too much enrichment, or are there any risks associated with certain?
I don't think you can ever really, it depending on the, you know, obviously we have to be careful if they're getting, you know, we're not going to give them 8 Kongs a day. If they're getting food addition to their daily allowance, then we need to bear that in mind, and we need to, you know, we know that keeping weight off our dogs is going to keep them healthier and is going to reduce the risk of arthritis. But if we are feeding them out of a Kong, then obviously we need to look at their daily allowance and adjust to that. If we're doing lots of scatter feeding and we're doing lots of treats in games or in boxes and things like that, yes, we have to take that out. In terms of can you do too much, I don't think you can, as long as you're mixing it up with environment, different environmental stuff, physical stuff. Even, you know, giving your dog a massage or giving your dog a cuddle and talking to them, you know, spending 10 minutes a day, turn the telly off, put your phone away, and just go and spend time sitting down with your dog. Obviously, if they want to be with you, you're not going to grab them and come arm lock them, headlock them into you. It's got to be done it's got to be a choice-based thing. If they want to come over and have a cuddle, you know, just turn the telly off, turn your phone off, just spend a little bit of time just getting to, and also looking at any of those lumps and bumps that they start developing as they get older. It's a great way of just having a little check, a little weekly check of your dog, of seeing if there's any different things, any changes within the body physically. It's a great way to kind of get involved, and again, it increase and enhance that relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Is it expensive?
Everything about having a dog tends to be expensive. I would say no, because things like finding different areas and going for a different walk somewhere, going to a new place for a walk, I'm very lucky. I have a friend who has a very, very large garden, which is where I do a lot of my videos. And my old boy's just come in. I would pick him up.
Let's meet him. Yeah.
Pick him up. I might see if he can come up in a minute. So I'm very lucky that they have an incredibly large garden that I can take my dogs to and let them have a rummage around. And because I don't go there all the time, when they do go to Aidan's house, they just have the best time ever. So even going around to a neighbour's house and letting your dog have a little search in their garden, or experiencing new gardens or new places, that doesn't cost anything at all.
Yeah.
Things like, you know, going through your recycle bin doesn't cost anything at all. Any of those kind of recycling ideas, you were just going to throw it away anyway. And if you've got dogs that like to shred and like to pull things away, here's my old boy. Have a little look. Here he is. There he is.
Hello, George. Oh, bless him. Look at his little grey moustache.
He's got his little grey muzzle. Craig's picked him up because he's too heavy for me to lift. He's seen a fox out of the window, so all of a sudden, he might be blind and deaf. He still knows that that's there.
Bless him. Oh, he's gorgeous.
He's got his little grey muzzle now.
Yeah.
And the fox has run off.
That's amazing, isn't it? They can have that sense and still see the fox, even though he's.
So what you can't see is my window's open, so he can smell it.
That's what it is. I was thinking. Yeah. Are there any sort of, this is a loaded question really, because we already know about your Facebook group, but is there any sort of resources or courses that people can attend or gain support, or places
So
that
it's interesting you say that, actually, because there's also another Facebook group run by a really nice chap called Shay Kelly, who it's called Canine Enrichment. It's a massive group. I thought Beyond the Bowl was big, but Canine Enrichment is huge, and they kind of do the same thing. We kind of focus a lot on food and things like that and different ways of feeding. His group is really good. There's quite a few different Facebook groups now that called some kind of variation of Canine Enrichment. There aren't any courses that I know of until I do one. So I am putting together a course in Canine Enrichment. Well, it's kind of going to be mind, body, well-being for dogs, really, but it will be an online course that people can access at any point. And as soon as I have that, then I'll obviously let you know. But yeah, there aren't any courses that I know of. There is a really nice course. Birgitta does it. I'll give you the link. And it's about it's kind of sensory gardens for dogs. It's how to create, she calls it a snuffle garden. I think she's from Holland. She calls it a snuffle garden, which is great. Sarah Fisher does a great, she's got a Facebook group called Ace Connections. And I think they have some courses that you can do, that you can physically go to. Isla Fishburne, I think, has some courses. So there are a few things. I don't think there's, as far as I know, and I certainly haven't found any yet. I haven't found anything that encompasses kind of all of it, if that makes sense, which is kind of what I'll do. I am looking at doing things like urban enrichment. So for people that live in a city, things like when people get rid of their Christmas trees, that's a really popular one at the end of the year. Letting the dogs, everyone puts them out for the council to go and collect them, and I'll take my dogs out to go and sniff everyone's Christmas trees or discarded Christmas trees, and that can be quite good. So it's finding different things that we can do to enrich environments and things like that, quite useful, especially when you live in a city. Go into an industrial estate, as long as you check the ground and make sure that there's no nails or there's nothing that's going to harm your dog. Industrial estates are brilliant because there's just loads of, generally it's less populated with people, but there's more wildlife, so there's more things to smell, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to sort of round it all off, can we go through like a day in the life of George, of what you do sort of
I don't think anyone wants a day in George's life, but although maybe. So he gets up, he gets up about, well, he has to have his medication at 5 in the morning, so I generally go like that. Give him his medication at 5. He has his food. I don't choose. He used to have Kongs for his breakfast. I don't do that anymore because it's just, I don't want him to get frustrated, or he just needs to eat because he's having his tablet. So he'll have his food in a bowl. Sometimes I will, like I said, just put it on one of these, just flat, rather than in a bowl, so that he can just take it off here. I do a lot of hand feeding with him because he hasn't got the shovel to pick his food up, so sometimes I will hand feed him.
Is he missing both his top and his lower and his upper incisors?
Just the bottom.
The bottom
so
one.
It's just the bottom. All of them have just gone. It's kind of weird. It happened quite quickly. Then he'll have a little pootle around. I'm lucky where I live, we've got a little pond opposite the flats where I live, and he'll have a little pootle around there. So he's got ducks, he's got squirrels, he's got rats, there's fish there. It's only tiny, but he'll have a little kind of 20-minute pootle around there. He'll come back, have a sleep, he'll get up. We might do a few little boxes, or like I said, if I've got an egg box, he'll have an egg box with some treats in that he can kind of rip, or he can kind of open and take the food out of there. He'll then have another sleep. He's of that age, a little bit like myself, where I need a little afternoon nap. And so he has a little afternoon nap. He'll get up, and again, he just kind of potters around, really. And if this is going to sound so weird, I don't know if it makes me a good dog trainer or a bad dog trainer. Mine know where the recycle bin is, so if they want something, they'll physically go and get it. And then And with Billy, I've got a young puppy, so Billy will go and get a water bottle out of it, and then he'll go and chew it. Or we have kind of edible chews. I do a lot of that. Again, with George, I have to pick things that are soft. So a few years ago, he would have things like pizzles or cow hooves, things. Now I have to have slightly smaller or slightly softer things. So I'll go for more meaty based stuff rather than bones. Or kind of the harder chew toys, because again, I'm just very aware he needs to still chew, and he needs to still have that kind of do that kind of mastication, and it's important for the muscles in his head, physically in his head as well. So he does have a chew kind of once a day, and then he'll have his food in the kind of late afternoon. He'll go out for another little pootle around, generally the pond, or I like taking him to just different places. So we might go to a disused airfield one day that's local to me, and then we might go to Ockham Common is quite close to me. I live in Surrey. He'll have a little play around there where there's different surfaces. So you've got sand, and then you've got kind of wooded areas where you've got a lot of bracken and a lot of fallen leaves. So we've got different substrates for him. Or like I said, I'll take him to the field where he likes running through the long grass. So he always gets kind of 1 or 2 walks a day. They're not the hour-long walks that he always used to have, but he gets a lot of variety in his walks, which is important for me because he can't see or hear.
Yeah. Oh, bless him. And how long do you sort of take him for a walk? Because I know you mentioned he's got arthritis, and as part of camp, everyone's got an arthritic dog who's following us. And how long?
I think it's, and again, I think it's knowing your own dog. It's kind of 10 to 20 minutes really for George is enough. And there'll be some days I'll know that if he's a little bit slower, or I'll just go and sit down and have a picnic with him. I do a lot of picnics in the summer, where I'll take the little menu platter, the little meal platter that I do. I'll take a couple of different items out with me. I might have a boiled egg. I might have a little bit of mango, the kind of dried mango that you get for humans. Yeah. I'll take some of that because it's nice and soft, but it's very sweet as well, because we know they taste differently to us. And then I might have a sprat or something like that, and I'll just put a blanket on the floor and I'll just sit with him on the floor, and we'll just lie and share. People must think I'm ever so weird when I go out. We'll share. I'll be sharing a boiled egg with obviously not like he takes a bite and I take a bite. I will break it up, I suppose, but I'll share the food with him in like a little picnic outside. And again, it's just something that he really likes. I always take water out with me, so it might be that we sit down, he lies down, he has a drink, or kind of. We can make ice lollies that you can take out with you.
Ice cubes. Someone said it's ice lollies safe to give dogs. I think there's been quite a lot of controversy.
There's a lot of Well, you, as a vet, I think the controversy came around with giving dogs ice cubes that were already in a state of heat stroke. That's not a good idea, but generally I make ice lolly again. So I have ice lolly mold. I'm so weird. Ice lolly molds, and I'll use a pizzle, not a pen, but I'll use a pizzle as the stick, and I'll use things like the baby foods, or the fruity baby foods, or I'll make paste, or I'll mix some of their food up and pack it in to a yogurt pot maybe, and again I'll stick a pizzle in, and then I'll run some warm water on it to take the lolly out, and then I'll give mine a lolly. So yeah. Things like treats in ice cubes. I do all kinds of weird things with ice lollies for my dogs. Yogurt.
I love having
pureed fruit. And if I've got some veggies in the fridge that I'm not going to eat, then I'll steam them and then I'll puree them up, and then I'll either have make them into little ice cubes, or I make them into ice lollies. And I'll have like layers. It's like, they look like they're eating what was it? Was it a rocket?
Rocket.
From yeah. They look like that. So they've got like different layers.
Yeah. I used to love a rocket when I was younger. There you go, you have doggy.
It's not so nice. I did try using a chicken foot as the lolly stick. And whilst I really liked it, it did freak me out a little. It freaked my friends out a little bit when I was like, can you just go and give them the lolly? And it was like this gnarly chicken foot coming out of the end. So yeah, stick to the pizzles or just do the ice cubes.
Oh dear. I mean, so we're coming towards the end, and so I'd like to open up the floor for anybody who's got sort of any questions for Diane, or anything, any sort of cases that you would like to, or any pet-specific questions that you would like to ask. That
the time goes so quickly.
I know, the time goes so quickly, doesn't it? But do check out our cam shop, because there is a great selection of snuffle mats, the licky mat, also that we have the bowls that you can adjust the height as well. So if you've got a dog that's got arthritis,
they're great,
neck, or they struggle to bend down to eat off the floor, then you can they're stackable, so you can adjust the height to suit your dog. So that's all available at the cam shop, and there's loads of free.
And I think, was it Ellie that's got the dog with the cruciate
yes,
issues? That having that bowl for her is going to be great, because it means that we can keep her at a height, keep her at a normal height.
Yeah, absolutely, because then it's not like putting extra pressure on those knees.
Extra pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've just reminded me, because I can see you holding your book. Yes, we're running a competition. So if you guys would like to answer this question, what did Diane suggest is the best way to pack a Kong for enrichment purposes? And I'll put it in the comments as well. So if everyone can answer that, then what we'll do is we'll put you all into a hat and pick a name out at random. And Diane has very kindly donated one of her Beyond the Bowl books and a Kong keyring. So
these are like gold dust. Everyone wants one of these. You can't get hold of them, but yeah, a Kong keyring if you want.
Okay. So yeah, if you want to,
I'm going to add to it. I'm going to throw in a large senior Kong.
There you go. So yeah, answer that question. What did Diane suggest was the best way to pack a Kong for enrichment? If you want to answer that question, then I will pick a winner in the next sort of 24 hours and let Diane know, get in contact with you to get your address, and we'll send that out to you, which is super exciting. Do have a couple of people that have put a few questions. Yeah, if you answer in the comments, and then I'll pick out all the names and we'll pick one at random. So someone has written, Lynn has written, is the sweetness okay for dogs? Mango is really sweet.
Yeah, so dogs, they don't have as many taste buds as us. So they taste sweet, sour, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a word I'm looking for. My brain's all, let me have a look. I have it. Oh.
Yeah, I was going to say bitter, but I felt like that sat with sour.
Do you know what? I had it here. I did it. My brain has completely gone. Let's have a look.
Katerina, you need to answer the question, then I'll put you in the competition.
So yeah, so they taste bitter, sweet, salty, and sour.
Salty. That's the one. Yeah.
When it gets to kind of this time of night, I'm a bit like George. I need help. But yeah, so and things like, and you know, even though things like dried banana and things like that, we know that they're quite sweet, but we're not going to give them a lot of it. So George will have about that much. How can you see my fingers? George will have about that much of a bit of mango. It's not a huge amount.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit. It's just a little bit to give them a different sensory feel.
Yeah, and Sarah Jane has written, do Whimsies make good lolly sticks? Whimsies are the best.
Oh yeah, Whimsies would, yeah. And I pack the Whimsies as well.
So you can get the hedgehogs, don't they? Oh yeah, my dog loves those hedgehogs.
If you get the hedgehogs, you can pack them just in the same way that you pack a Kong. And they can chew the whole lot. Yeah,
that's true. So then for some more brachycephalic dogs, actually, that would work really well, wouldn't it?
Or the crocodiles would be really good for those, for the brachycephalic breeds.
Yeah.
Because the crocodiles are flatter on the other side. So yeah, you can pack those and they would be good for those.
And then Jane has written, is acupuncture a good treatment pre-TPLO operation? Oh, that's something that you'd have to discuss with your veterinary surgeon or rehab specialist, Jane. That's not something that we can answer because it's very case specific and it would depend on your dog. And so, yeah. Oh, someone said try carrots. Oh, is it okay to give them a pinch of salt in something just for a novel experience?
I probably wouldn't use salt, just because we want to keep them. We don't want to increase the salt content in their food. If it's something, if you wanted to use, if you did want to put salt in, I wouldn't use table. Actually, I wouldn't use salt. I wouldn't put salt in as a sensory thing. I would look at a savoury food. So I would look at something like a dried fish, a dried sprat, or something like that, rather than something really salty. And I have seen recently people using trying to make a gravy, do ice cubes using a low salt broth. Or using like vegetable brothes and things like that, oxo cubes and things like that. I wouldn't use anything that's got salt in it. I would just use either a bone broth that you've made yourself. There's lots of recipes online, but no, I wouldn't use like the oxo cubes or anything like that.
I read somewhere for people home cooking, like add some salt or soya sauce. I feed home cooked vegan food though.
It's a no from me, I'm afraid. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be increasing the salt content. I would want to be reducing it.
Yeah.
Just from a health point. But obviously, you know, get advice from your canine nutritionist. They'll have a better idea of what, especially if you're formulating your own food, as to what you need to add in. But for me, I wouldn't be adding salt or soy sauce to increase it.
Yeah.
One thing that I didn't mention actually, which I do a lot of, is in terms of increasing different scent and things like that. I don't do it often, but probably once a month I'll go to a charity shop and I'll spend £25 of buying the awful stuff that costs a couple of pence, like those old kind of granny shoes, or like an old pair of workman's boots.
I love it. Or home to sniff.
Yeah, a really dodgy old handbag, or I mean, even the clothes, even though they've been washed, they will still have different scents on. And I use things like that. So I'm not gonna get children's toys that are gonna get chewed, but things like an old builder's boot. Sometimes you get some of those in there, or an old pair of denim shorts, or like some ripped jeans or things. Oh, they're quite popular at the moment. But yeah, I'll just, whatever is kind of the cheapest that is pretty rubbish, I'll just spend £20, £25, and then I'll just stick that in the garden, and let the dogs just go and have a sniff of it.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah. That's a really good idea, actually.
And actually, if you get a couple of friends of you doing it, because if you get a couple of friends of you doing it, you can then swap all the things that you buy.
Oh yeah.
So each month you can swap them over with your different friends, and I just have a bag of stuff and we just swap bags with each other. There's 5 of us that do it, and that's quite fun.
Yeah, that is really fun. Oh wow, I mean, it's come to the end of our time with you, and it's been so interesting and so packed full of sort of really valuable advice for everybody, and really valuable sort of inventive and creative ideas. And we're just so grateful that you have given up your time this evening to come and join us on cam and sort of give us some of your words of wisdom with your enrichment. Everyone, do remember to enter the competition by, in the comments, writing the answer to what did Diane suggest is the best way to pack a Kong, and I will pick a winner in the next 24 hours, and then Diane will get that sent out to you, which is super exciting. I'm quite jealous. I might enter myself.
And I just want to say thank you very much for inviting me on. It's been brilliant, and I know I kind of do tend to go off in tangents, and I do need reining back in, but it's just really brilliant, and I love sharing any information. If anyone's got any questions, then feel free to message me or email me. My company, I'm Diane at superhounds.co.uk, or you can find me on Facebook. You can see my name there. Bit of an odd spelling, but yeah, if anyone has got any questions or wants any more information, then feel free to message me. I'm hugely approachable, and I don't need any reason to talk about dogs for hours on end. And yeah, if there is anything that I can help anyone with, then let me know.
Yeah, oh, it's been great. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time when we join you again for another event. And I'm sure Diane will be asking you to come back. So
please, I'd love to come back.
Yeah, it's been absolutely fabulous. All right, bye cam followers, till next time.